Hey there, fellas. Welcome to the Thinking is Infinite podcast. Joe.
And John.
And yeah, we have some things to talk about.
Joe's got some things to talk about.
There have been a lot of things happening, whether they're online, offline, whatever. We're going to be talking about them today. Going to be finishing up all the Olympic stuff because the Olympics have just wrapped up.
And that was, 3 episodes we talked about it, right?
Yep.
Now, I remember we talked about before. I know Joe wants to tell this story, and I'm sorry, Joe, if I'm jumping over you. Hold that thought on that story. But do you remember the first podcast when we talked about the Olympics?
Yeah.
We were talking about breakdancing?
Yeah. Down was...
And there was some... And I did see some people doing a heck of a job breakdancing. But we also saw someone that scored a flat-out 0 in breakdancing. Now, I want to pose you a question, Joe. Obviously, she went in not knowing what the heck she was doing, right?
Maybe,
if people saw the videos online, it was like basically me dancing and trying to break dance, right? I mean, It was pretty weak. Sure. I think if someone goes to the Olympics and scores a 0 in any score, they have to pay back the whole entire trip that they got for free from that country. What do you think about that?
I don't know, man. I don't know. That's just, I don't know. I have never seen, I never saw such, like, a weird reaction. Like, some people were very against it. Some people were much more for it. Like,
for
I
what?
did...
the woman did it?
For the woman, yeah. Like, there were some people that were like, oh, well, it was actually, like, really good and all that. Like, there was definitely a lot of, like... There was some news articles that were saying that it wasn't that bad.
She scored a 0.
I don't know. Some of them were saying that it was good. Anyways,
but I'm sorry. Go ahead. But you know what? It was. You know what it was? When you saw a real break dancer next to her. I mean, like the winner was like incredible. Like,
that's
and then
you true. I think the B-boys, the U.S. actually scored bronze in that.
Oh, they did. Okay,
but
we should have won that. We originated breakdancing, but okay.
I don't know. But speaking of bronze, there's been a bronze medal controversy, and it's gotten pretty big. So apparently, there was the bronze medal for one of the gymnastics competitions involved 3 people, and these were there was a Romanian athlete.
Okay.
There were actually 2 Romanian athletes and a U.S. athlete, right? So the U.S. athlete was judged what they thought that originally the Romanian athlete was scheduled to win 3rd place, right? It seemed pretty fair and dumb. But the problem was that when, in one of the categories, the U.S. athlete and the coach for the U.S. team said that the U.S. athlete wasn't scored fairly. So, what ended up happening is the U.S. filed an appeal.
Okay.
Stating, to the judges, saying, like, hey, they weren't scored fairly. And then the U.S. won that appeal, and the U.S. got the bronze. However, Romania contested the U.S. because they said that the appeal was filed too late. It was filed 4 seconds too late, according to the Romanians. Now, with that information, the Court for Arbitration in Sport, which is a Swiss court that handles, like, sports stuff, they ruled that the U.S. athlete had to retract her medal. But then what they found out on that logic, was that apparently the Court of Arbitration messed up because they didn't even contact the right U.S. officials. They contacted the wrong people. So instead of the officials that were arguing for the U.S. case, they contacted other people who weren't even related to it.
Oh my god!
So now the U.S. officials only heard about it like a few hours before they were, and actually heard about it after their response was already due.
Wow.
And not only that, but the U.S. had video evidence showing that they did submit their appeal on time.
Oh my goodness.
But because the court couldn't consider that in their response, because they only had like 10 hours or something to write the whole response. So now the court is under scrutiny and they're trying to appeal it to a different tribunal.
So does anyone? So the bronze medal at this point is still up in the air?
Yeah, I mean it was like temporarily awarded to the U.S. athlete, but it could definitely be.
So do you know who was on the podium with the gold, silver,
it was
bronze?
I think the Romanian athlete got off the podium.
Okay.
And that was how the whole thing kind of started between the two.
Well, the way I look at it, I don't know how you feel about it, but from what you're telling me, and it has nothing to do with US or Romania or anything like that. I'm not listen, if there was an appeal done and it was 6 seconds later, I understand there's rules for time frames when you do an appeal, and you even said yourself that after looking at the review, it was on time. But to me, if you got to get the call right, and if the call was correct and the US won, I don't know much about gymnastics, but if they judged it correctly, 6 seconds shouldn't matter. What do you think about that? Even if it was Romanian that was going to win and the US was on the other side.
I actually, oddly enough, kind of get where their laws are coming from. It's really strict for a reason. It's done so that way, like, the whole competition doesn't get hamstrung or anything like that.
Okay.
But there's definitely, a real thing with these. Like, if you, file, one of these documents, it's like, you got to get it done, on that minute. Like, that happens quite a lot. That happens, actually, to, it's pretty similar. I've never told this story before. But one of the students that one of the students that was in my broadcasting class, she actually submitted a video that was 1 second too long. And because it was 1 second too long, even though they actually admitted that she probably would have won something had it not been 1 second too long, but because it was 1 second too long, they couldn't judge it. So that was something that also kind of piqued my memory of that. But that's like a thing, though.
I'm not a fan of that because here's the thing. When someone's in the Olympics, what are you in the Olympics for? Competition, right?
Yeah.
Whoever's going to be the best at a certain skill, whatever it is, gymnastics, breakdancing, whatever, running, whatever, swimming, whatever that sport is. And ultimately, the gold, silver, and bronze should be the best 3 athletes.
Yeah.
And if under whatever rule it was, the American was the 3rd best, she should get the bronze. Like your friend, if she had the best video, but it ran 1 second longer, did the 1 second really play a part in that video becoming the best video? That's where I fall, but I understand that, when you have different opinions and you have an arbitration or some type of ruling, it can go in any direction because there are rules in place. Like you said, there has to be a certain amount of time before you put an appeal in, and they have to keep the competition going, right? They can't just stop the competition for an infinite amount of time, no pun intended to our name of our podcast. But you understand what I'm saying, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, I understand both sides of it. However, I think I would always judge for the best athlete or the best, in your friend's case, the best video, and that should overrule the leeway of a few seconds.
I mean, honestly, that's the difficulty of it all. And then you got this also, the big problem is, how did they not know which officials to contact? That's a big part on the Court of Arbitration's part. That's a big problem.
It is a big problem.
That they're not contacting the right people to ensure they can file a response or an adequate response.
Now, you followed the Olympics a little more than I did. It seemed to be a little less organized this year than it really should have been.
I mean, I saw some of the issues. Yes. What's weird is they reached out to some other people, and then by the time the U.S. officials even got anything stating that anything had been filed, apparently the response time had to be extended, but it only gave them 2 hours or something, 2 additional hours, and they were contacted after the previous time was already over because they literally contacted the wrong people.
Oh my god. So what do you think should happen?
First of all, I don't know why. I think first of all, you want to make sure that you're contacting the right people in place because you can't I feel like you have to in these cases, you have to make sure that you're connecting to the people that are filing the response, not to like other people outside of that. Second, there was a big thing where they proposed, Romania at least proposed, that all three should get bronze, which was a big thing that Romania was like, okay, well, all three up in contention, so all three get bronze. And then the International Gymnastics Federation wouldn't allow that. Mm-hmm. So then the court was like, we're actually like really disappointed in all of this, and we need to have the International Gymnastics Federation do better next time when it comes to the timing of the appeals. But like, dude, you didn't even contact the right people. You couldn't get an email address right. Like, I don't know what to say about
it's
that.
tough. You know what it is? I feel bad for the athletes in this case.
Yeah, because they're all
they tried their hardest. They tried their hardest, and now they're involved in a court situation just to see who's going to grab a piece of metal. And it kind of sucks. I really feel for the athletes in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, one of them was literally accused of being like, of stealing the medal, and then someone else was and then they had to delete. A lot of them had to like go back on their social medias. It was like a big thing for the athletes.
Yeah, I could imagine. It had to be very, very tough. I've seen, it's not the first time. I mean, I remember in the 80s there was controversy in the Olympics, and I remember it stopped me from watching boxing in the Olympics. I saw this American boxer beat up on this guy for freaking 3 rounds or how many rounds there was in the Olympic sport. And they gave it to the other guy. And you realize that, oh gosh, judges can be definitely skewing the results. And things like gymnastics, unfortunately, has a judging component to it.
Yeah.
So even judges can be biased to a country or negatively biased towards another country.
That's true.
And that's why I typically gravitate towards the sports that there can't be a judge that screws it up, like a race.
Yeah.
You see who wins the race. The guy who crosses the finish line first wins the race.
Yeah,
so
like
a little
like
better
the
than
swimming relays.
Better than although the competitions that have judges are pretty incredible. I mean, you think of the gymnastics side. These men and women do things in gymnastics that are unbelievable.
Yeah.
As well as like in the winter sports, the ice skating competitions. But it's so hard when you have subjectivity and judges, deciding who wins.
And it's especially hard when you have, certain cases, like in this case with it kind of hinging on when something was filed, when that's not clear, and when the timing of when it's filed, isn't made clear, and then you can't really appeal anywhere if something is found that completely contradicts what was found in the first place. The only option now, I think, for the U.S. is to try to appeal to the Swiss Federal Tribunal. Mm-hmm. So they might try to go there, but there aren't that many other options because the Court of Arbitration has refused to hear the case again.
Yeah.
Which, like, I don't know why because apparently the rules don't allow for that.
Yeah.
But, like, they should, though. If something new has come out, and especially if you haven't even gotten the other side to even talk, like, I don't know.
I find it, it's funny. It just, in retrospect, you're looking back and going, these poor athletes, they work their butts off, and who's deciding it? Arbitrators and someone looking at rule books and things like that.
Yeah.
It's very weird. Anything else on the Olympics?
Other than it was a little... It was actually, like, really... the big thing is breakdancing isn't even returning for 28. The one in LA isn't going to include breakdancing, which is ironic because the one in the country that invented it isn't including it. But the one outside of it is. Which is really weird. And also
I think they have tried sports from time to time, competitions, and they've stopped doing them from time to time. And I guess breakdancing is one of them. I remember.
Yeah, maybe.
Even baseball used to be an Olympic sport, and that's not an Olympic sport anymore.
Yeah, I think they're actually bringing back other Olympic sports in 28. Although, actually, what's
do you know of any others that they're going to bring back?
I think, like, cricket or something.
Cricket's very popular.
There's, like, also, I think maybe there's a football thing, definitely a flag football thing that actually some NFL athletes are trying to get into.
I thought I heard that.
That's something that's going to LA. But yeah, there's also like, I think there was also like a movement to try and get it onto 2032, which would be in Brisbane in like Australia. So they're trying to get it on for that.
Is this flag football?
No, the breakdancing.
Breakdancing, okay.
Because they're trying to like, they might do it for Brisbane instead of like 20 in LA because actually the interesting thing about breakdancing is it was suggested for 2028 originally, but then they kind of
pushed it forward.
Yeah, they kind of like rejected it.
Oh, okay.
But they added it to Paris, I guess, instead. But yeah, that's kind of
pretty much the Olympics. And I think, Joe, one of the other topics you wanted to talk about today has to do with something going on in Europe as well, right?
Yep, the UK. There's been huge riots, and these riots...
Yeah, talk to me about the riots. I haven't really dug into what's going on with the riots. So talk to me. What's happening with the riots?
It's a big migrant issue. So like the US, the UK has been dealing with migrants that have come in. And just to make this more impartial, people in Britain are accusing the police of basically treating the migrants better than they treat other people in the UK.
Okay.
Now, the police have said that it's not true, but there have been instances where they've refused to prosecute people who are minorities for seemingly, and I do say seemingly with the big keyword, no reason other than the fact that they're minorities.
Migrants.
Like, for instance, there was like a Pakistani gang that was going after like children, but because of the fact that because they've been going after them for 15 years and they did nothing about it. And people were wondering, like, okay, why aren't you doing anything about it? Is it because these people are Pakistani? And because of the
question.
fact that...
Why if someone's committing a crime, it shouldn't matter what skin color they are or what race they are or what gender they are. They commit a crime, you commit a crime.
Yeah. So that's kind of what some of these people were saying. But the problem is that, a lot of the, people are like, oh, well, it's institutional racism. So that means that, you can't actually arrest the minorities because of the historical oppression or something. It's like, but they're committing crimes.
Someone
if they're
commits a crime,
they should be arrested like any other person. It doesn't matter, I feel. But that's something that a lot of people
I mean, if you're gonna do something like that, then be gutsy enough to write a law and say this is only for people with this skin pigment and not this skin pigment. I don't understand. And I think you're right, Joe. It's like, I listen,
history is rough.
Racism exists.
Yeah.
History is rough. There's been a rough time. However, in my opinion, you're not going to make things better by excusing bad behavior because they're a migrant as opposed to someone who lives in the country.
I think that's just...
You're only going to build more resentment, and I think that's what's happening right now in the UK, isn't it?
And it's also builds more division, too.
Absolutely.
Because when people feel like, and it's also like, it doesn't even benefit the minorities. Because the minorities get attacked, too, by these people.
Of course.
That are they're attacking other minorities.
In Britain, right?
Not even just in Britain, in the US, too. Like, in some of the, more, liberal cities where they'll be like, okay, well, we're not going to prosecute the minority criminals. It's like, okay, but they're attacking other minorities. Other black people are being affected by this, too.
It's interesting that you're saying that. It's interesting you're saying that because I did hear a statement over the last few days, and I found it very interesting. It was about... There's certain parts of government right now, globally now apparently, that doesn't care for the victim.
Yeah.
Do you think when governments ignore crimes because of someone's maybe background or race, religion, do you think they're not caring about the victim?
I don't know. I honestly
for every
think
crime
it's probably
there's a victim.
I know, but I think it's probably because a lot of people in the US and even in the UK have fallen for the idea of like the oppression, and that anything that the oppressed group does to the oppressor is justified and okay.
But what about the victim now? Let's just say, God forbid, let's say it's me. It's me. I didn't oppress anybody, but if I get bopped over the head, I have to hope that it was for me to get justice, I have to hope they were a certain religion that hit me or race that hit me?
because the thing is, these people will go on to like historical oppression, and then because all these people are economically oppressed and everything,
but there's still a victim. There's still someone who got a victim of a crime, and shouldn't they be cared for? See, that's where I have a big problem with some of the decisions that are made because a society or a race has been oppressed. Like you even said yourself, it's happening where let's just say X minority, who cares what it is doing a crime to the same race. I still feel bad for that victim. And I want the person who did it to get in trouble.
Yeah.
I don't care what color you are. If there was a victim there, the victim should be taken care of. And part of being taken care of is locking up the person or punishing the person who did it.
Because
let's just say it was an assault. Well, if they got an assault, they're not going to go away for life, but they should go away for that.
It's also like a lot of these people, it's also like a lot of them feel like sympathy for the person, like the person who committed the crime. They'll feel sympathy for those people because they're being told, they're poor victims of society. It's like, no,
I understand it, but
these are sociopaths.
There's still a victim. Now, what I also believe,
in a lot of cases,
I also believe that, Joe, I think that there's a big part of me that knows that the criminal justice system definitely needs some reform.
Yeah.
In a sense where if someone went down a bad path as a kid, right? And they were oppressed or whatever, they lived in a tough neighborhood, they had a tough growing up, and they did a stupid crime.
Yeah, like something stupid.
Instead of maybe robbed a store at gunpoint, but didn't hurt anyone. But, you know, the person went down the wrong path, scared the hell out of person.
Maybe they shouldn't be punished for life, but they need to maybe be rehabilitated.
Rehabilitate. Don't just throw someone in a jail cell for 3 years and let him hang out with all the other bad people.
That's why there needs to be balance.
What about teaching the person? What about giving the person a skill in the jail? Teaching them how to read correctly, teaching them how to balance a checkbook, teaching them how to live in society.
Completely agree. Because honestly, the way that society works now is you either don't punish the person at all, and you just let them go out and do whatever they want,
do the crimes,
or you punish them with a stick, beat them up, not beat them up with a stick, like literally, but like,
put them in jail, where they live like animals, because they don't live good there.
Yeah, and then they also, not only that, but they also go back when they get out of jail and they just commit more crimes.
Well, that's what I mean.
Like,
if you're hanging
if you're hanging out with bad people,
you're going to do more bad things.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, I think
that's why actually Nassau has a youth court. You ever hear about Nassau Youth Court? It's actually something we talked about. It's where they will have juvenile offenders. Mm-hmm. So let's say you stole from a store, right? They'll put you, they have two options for you. You can either go and get in the criminal prosecution system, or if you're a minor, you go to youth court. Okay. And what the youth court does is they go out there and they're like, okay, well, you did this crime, but we're going to figure out why you did this crime. Mm-hmm. And what they'll do is they have other people who've also committed some crimes serve on the jury for the youth court, and the students are like the judges. So it's like student lawyers arguing for the punishment and what punishment they should get. And what they can do is a variety of things. They can do like community service, or they can say that you have to serve on the youth court, or they can even do weirder punishments. There was one time where these kids, they stole from a Macy's, right? They stole stuff from, I think, a Macy's or Bloomingdale's, I can't remember, but one of those stores. They stole from the Macy's, and the reason they stole from the Macy's was because they wanted to get enough money to record a rap song. Yes, that was their goal. So what they did was they said, okay, you have to record a rap song apologizing to your parents for getting you out of prison, right? So that was something that they'll do things like that in order to punish the bad actors, but still teach a lesson instead of like giving them away for life. Because I do think that actually doesn't work either.
No, I agree. And you know what? If for every person that makes a mistake and has to pay a price for a crime, I really truly think that there should be a road to redemption in some way, shape, or form. Now, listen, if you commit most heinous of crimes,
you're probably not going to be redeemed.
I think there's a place for that person. There should be a jail for that type of person. Someone who's pure evil. But for a lot of crimes, a lot of people, they're not necessarily terrible people. They've gone down the wrong path, or they did something stupid, or they just had a bad judgment moment. And for those people, not the rapists, not the murderers,
those people can be redeemed.
Don't put them in a jail with the murderers and rapists,
because then you're going to influence them to do bad things too, and you're going to eliminate any light that they have, or any potential for light.
Let them learn a skill. Let them be an electrician. Teach them to do something with their lives. Make purpose into their lives. I agree.
Because honestly, that's actually what oddly enough, I had like something like written. I had like an idea one day. It was called the 3 strike system. The first strike is something like the youth court that I mentioned. The second strike was like, okay, you have youth court, but you're still going to jail. And then the third strike is you go to jail. Kind of like weeding out people who can be redeemed, because I think that there are people who can be redeemed. I don't think that we have to have people and all these people going down the path of criminality that they have, because I think only some of them can be redeemed, but I think some of them have gone too far, and that they I favor balance in all things.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I don't like the fact that either side is really imbalanced, because you see all these people, even on the writers are like, okay, well, we have to punish them, absolutely. It's like, okay, but then what happens when they get out of jail? They're just doing the same thing again. And it's like, what if we actually turn some of them, not all of them, into productive people, It can work. We've seen it can work. So, But anyways, that was a long tangent.
But you're also talking about, there was other things about the British.
Yep.
Right? What happened?
UK police.
Yes. This is what I remember you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, the UK police is trying to go after Americans, and what specific target apparently has been Elon Musk. So they're trying to go after him.
How'd that work out last
starting
time they
the
tried to go
riots.
after the Americans?
1776
didn't work out for them too well, but go on.
Well, apparently they're trying to arrest people in the US and extradite them for comments about the British riots. So people who are American citizens, they want to be arrested and extradited to face criminal charges.
If I go on Twitter right now and criticize them, they're going to want to arrest me? Is that what you're basically saying?
I mean, yeah.
I mean, I'm a little guy. I probably don't have anyone who's going to read my tweets anyway. But if I was, let's just say, a prominent person like an Elon Musk, if I do the criticism, they're going to try to arrest him.
Yeah. They've.
What do you think about that, Joe? Being a young kid, I'm appalled by it. But being a young kid in today's society, what do you think about the ability to be able to speak your mind?
I think it's extremely important. I don't think that a lot of these things, like, I think the thing about, like, countries like the UK and stuff is people at least think of them as like, okay, well, you're allowed to say whatever you want. You're not. Because free speech there is a privilege. In the US, it's a right. They can't take that away from you. The government in the UK can take away your speech whenever they want. It's just like, they give it to you because they're so kind that they'll bestow on you free speech. But if you do something bad, you can get that revoked.
Now think about that. Think about that for a moment. Just take a step back, and what is speech? What
just
we're doing.
Anything
you and I are doing right now. We're speaking. So there are governments on this planet that consider this a crime.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's true. I mean,
Hey, Britain, you know what I'm doing right now?
Shut up. Anyway,
I'm telling them we're number one. That's what I'm doing into the microphone. They can't hear it.
Well, it's like, I just don't know why they've gotten this idea through their. I think it's because a lot of, like, I think the most disturbing part is that a lot of, like, more liberal people support this idea of, like, government regulating things online.
But
it's like, that doesn't,
when I was younger,
don't like that.
When I was younger, liberal was the ones that were saying, speak your mind. Where did it flip? Things flipped upside down. Since I was little,
past 5 years.
I remember being a kid and being told that liberal people wanted everyone to be able to speak their mind, live their life, and now it's like, now you're saying to me is that those societies are now turned into people that say, don't speak your mind unless you're speaking the way I want you to speak. Is that okay? Yeah. Now listen, I understand that there's a limit, and I'm trying to say this in a way. You can't go out online and make like hope for someone dies.
Yeah.
And threatening. And that's not right. But I'm saying is having an opinion is a completely different thing. Disagreeing with someone's rules is a completely different thing. You should be able to discuss how you don't necessarily agree with someone without being... Now, if you threaten someone, yeah, that's a different story. I'm gonna blank you, and saying things like that. I understand that part, and I understand there's got to be a limitation to, you can't just threaten people. Yeah. But other than that, I'm like, say whatever the hell you want. It's just words. It's just words on a computer screen. It's just words out of people's mouths. Everyone get over it.
It's like, it's also like, I think it's
7 billion people on the planet. You're not the only one with an opinion.
I mean, honestly, I think it's also like a lot of these people really don't get is that it can also go after you in the same way you want it to go after other people. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if the government can remove false information, then what's to say that anything could count as false information?
Or think of it this way. If they're not in power, let's just say...
Yeah, what happens then?
Let's just say the blue shirt party's in power, and the blue shirt party thinks one way, and then the yellow shirt party thinks a different way. Now, the blue shirt party's in power, they're going to say everything the yellow shirt says is wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And you can't say it. Now, what if yellow shirt gets in power? Now, the blue shirt people now have to get worried. See, that's why I don't like when there's too much power in government. Because just because your side is the one leading right now doesn't mean they're going to lead forever. Yeah. And if your party loses power and you say, I want a very powerful government and I want everyone to think the way I think, well, you know what? What if you get voted out? Now, they have the right to do it, and then it compounds on itself and makes things worse in this country. No matter what happens, no matter who's in charge, everyone in the United States should be able to speak their mind, and I feel bad for people in Britain.
I think it's also like, it's something that a lot of people think, it's like, okay, well, the government's gonna be, like, responsible and, like, do what I like, but it's also like, what if... Because even, like, among leftists, there is a divide. There are divides over things. Like, it's not like all leftists just agree on everything. Like, there are some things where, like, for instance, there was a senator who, he was once one of the people that were trying to call for social media, but then he got attacked by some of the leftists for not really supporting the Palestine cause, which I'm not going to talk about too much, but, like, that's what he got attacked by. And you get attacked by the other people on the left who are also saying another thing. It's like, well, then what is and what isn't allowed?
Exactly. Which even more proof in my head to just say, let people speak their mind. If you don't like someone's opinion, move on.
I remember,
if you don't like our opinion, we still want you to listen. But you don't have to agree. I don't always agree with everything you say, Joe. Yeah. And Joe, I know you don't agree with everything I say. We go back and forth sometimes. We think somewhat similarly.
Yeah.
But we don't always agree on everything. And and the left and the right have to start realizing it. Let everyone say what they want. Let's go by ideas. Let's not stifle speech. Let's not stifle ideas. Let's not, stifle internet content because you don't like what you hear. Mm-hmm. I don't like that stuff at all. And it's also, really going in that direction. With the tech also is doing it.
It's also really weird because it's changed drastically in 5 years.
I know.
Because in the past 5 years, this is true. 2018, only 40% of Democrats supported the government intervening in, like, free information and stuff. That increased to 80% in 2023. So just within
Short-sighted
5
thought.
years, 5 years,
And you know what changed?
it's almost doubled.
You know why? Because they're the party in charge. See, that's where I don't like it. You have to be consistent. If you don't want government overstepping a boundary when you don't have power, you shouldn't want to overstep your boundary when you are in power.
And it's crazy is the Republicans never flipped. The Republicans in 2018 thought the same way as the Republicans do in 2023.
Isn't that interesting how the party that is demonized so much by the media is generally, not all, generally.
Yeah,
there's some
wackos.
a-holes.
Don't get that wrong.
There's a-holes in both parties.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, in general, for the most part, they're the ones who want the free speech. When they're in power, it's okay to talk bad about us. But it's okay for me to talk too. So it's I find that very interesting and almost like an inflection point. Now young people have to decide as they're growing into their own minds and how they want government to run. Do you want a government that only one side can speak out? Or do you want a government where people can feel okay to disagree?
And I think what's also really interesting about that is I remembered there was a story about someone in China. This was back during the Cultural Revolution under Mao. And this story was about someone, he was a Marxist guy, so he was a Marxist. Mm-hmm. He criticized Vladimir Lenin in Russia. Lenin? He criticized Vladimir Lenin's rule by stating that Vladimir Lenin wasn't a true communist. But because at the time Mao Zedong didn't like people who criticized the Soviet Union, he was arrested and seized by the Red Guards who claimed that he was against the communist movement for stating, because he was a Marxist, but because he criticized Soviet Marxism, not even China's Marxism, and because the leader didn't necessarily agree, that's enough to get you removed.
See, I one last thing before we wrap up, and I want to ask you this question, Joe. You said about the left has changed their position on speech since 2018. You said the last 5 years have told a story. I guess the question I have for you is, do you think they're confident in their opinions? Because they see, I feel like the more confident you are in your thoughts and your beliefs, the more open you are to everyone else can speak. Do you think there's an insecurity there?
I don't know. I honestly think that there's definitely I think there's definitely a lot of confidence in them, but I don't really know, because there's definitely an element that doesn't really add up. I feel like what's weird is I would actually like to see if this happens in any other election cycles. Mm-hmm. Did they do the same in 2016 and beyond, mm-hmm. or was this only a 2018 to 2023 thing? Because they didn't survey any of the other elections, the 2016 one versus the 2012 one. I would actually like to see how people fluctuate their views based on free speech, based on who's in charge. Mm-hmm. Yeah, mm-hmm. I'd actually like to see that.
I think it does. I think it really does, and I just hope that I pray that we for you also. You're younger and you have a whole life to live. I'm on the back end. I'm 50. Yeah. I hopefully have a bunch more years left, but I'm not a young kid. I want you to have the life where you can get information fairly and you can make your decision fairly and not when you go on Google or whatever search engine, you get true facts. You don't have to weed through and who's lying to me and who's being honest. Because right now, the government right now is in cahoots with the media. You see it all the time, and they're getting a certain message out. And when I don't agree with it, I'm like, wait a minute, and I'm trying to find information to the contrary. Whatever, name any issue. Inflation. They say inflation has gone down. Well, I go to the supermarket all the time, and it's not going down. So let me read an article about how inflation works.
I remember what was interesting about that was there was a Walmart thing where people were trying to check their past Walmart orders.
Yes.
And then they found out that Walmart disabled that shortly afterwards.
Yes,
Remember
because
that?
they didn't want people to see. They were only paying $150. Now they're paying $250.
No, it's actually $414.
I know. I didn't even give it a big exaggeration.
It was $150 before 2021. Actually, I'm pretty
Right.
sure 2020, 2021 or something like that. And then now it's like $414 for the same for something combination of items.
But let me give you an example. We all know when we go to the store that inflation is hit, right? Now, when you see stories of inflation is going down, it's going great, it's going better than it is before, it's only 2%, and I'm going, wait a minute.
But that's a derivative graph.
Yes.
That means that's still going up. The prices are still going up, but not by as high.
Right, and that's the thing. That's how they're lying to us. They're saying it's getting better. And thank you, Joseph. Thank you for saying that, because no one says that. And I got to look online. I got to search like a madman to see what you just told me. It is just going up slower. It's still going up, right? Shouldn't it be a negative if it's really going down?
Well, deflation has its own things, but actually...
There hasn't been any deflation, I know that, right?
Yep. Anyways...
Oh, Joe, this was a fun episode. We had a lot to talk about.
Yep.
Well, we'll see you guys next week.
Okay. See you guys. Bye.